What is the imperfect tense? The imperfect tense describes an action that was happening in the past or used to happen. It is called an imperfect tense because the action didn't have a defined end, so it was an incomplete or imperfect action. Examples in English are, I was watching, I used to watch. You would use it when saying what you used to do, i.e., when I was at primary school, I used to go to school at 7 a.m. every day. Today we're looking at Spanish verbs in the imperfect tense. We're going to ask ourselves these questions. Who's doing the verb? What is the infinitive form of the verb? What do I need to do to the infinitive of the verb? What are the correct endings that need to be added? Our aims are to learn how to recognise regular and irregular imperfect tense verbs and to learn how to form regular and irregular imperfect tense verbs in Spanish. Think of this useful analogy. Verbs are like flowers. They have a head and a stem. Here we see three common examples: hablar, comer, vivir. They have a head, which is the last two letters, and a stem, habl, com, bib. Verbs are like flowers because when you chop off the head, all you're left with is a stem. Here we see it. Chop off the head, chop, 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 then you're left with the stem. Now you add the correct ending to the stem to make the verb. So let's look at this process in a bit more detail. Step 1. Choose the person doing the verb. This will tell you which ending to use. Here you can see the subject pronouns in Spanish. Yo, tú, él, ella, nosotros, nosotras, vosotros, vosotras, ellos, ellas. There's also usted, which is the same as he and she, which means you in a formal context. There's also ustedes, which is the same as the ellos, ellas form, which is you in a formal context when there's more than one person being spoken to. Step 2. Find the infinitive of the verb and chop off the ending. The infinitive is the verb that you will find when you look it up in a dictionary. So for example, if you look up speak, you'll find hablar, which means to speak. Look up eat, you'll find comer, which means to eat. Look up live and you'll find vivir, which means to live. So, chop off the endings and then you're left with the stem, hence the flower analogy. Step 3. Add the correct ending for the person doing the verb to the end of the stem. So here we see the three common examples: hablar, comer, vivir. So we have hablar, hablaba, hablabas, hablaba, hablábamos, hablabais, hablaban. Now obviously these mean I used to speak, you used to speak, he, she used to speak, or you in a formal context used to speak, we used to speak, you plural used to speak, and they used to speak, or you plural formal used to speak. Then we have comer and vivir. Comía, comías, comía. Comíamos, comíais, comían. And then vivir. Vivía, vivías, vivía. Vivíamos, vivíais, vivían. Notice how the endings for ER and IR verbs are exactly the same in the imperfect tense. It's only AR where you have that ABA sound at the end. Here's a reminder of how it works. You have the Spanish imperfect tense, you need the stem plus the ending. And remember, the stem is the infinitive, the one you find when you look it up in a dictionary, minus the last two letters. So here we see three examples. Hablaba, I used to speak. Comía, he or she used to eat. Vivíamos, we used to live, or were living. Now you see a demonstration of how to apply this knowledge and some examples. When creating verbs yourself, you can either use a paper dictionary or an online dictionary like wordreference.com. So the first one we have to translate is we used to run. First we need to find the verb to run. So let's have a look in this dictionary here. As we can see, you have the noun a run, as in to go for a run, but you also have the verb here, which is correr. And as it's we used to run, we first write the infinitive, correr, which is an ER verb. Then we chop off the ER, and then if we look here for we, nosotros, nosotras, we have íamos. Okay, next one. She used to study. First we need the verb to study. So we type in study, and it gives us the infinitive. If we scroll down, we can eventually find the verb, which is study at school or university, estudiar. Because it's she used to study, first of all we take off the AR, and then we can see for ella over here it's ABA, estudiaba. Next, I used to prepare. So we need the verb to prepare, which as you can see here is preparar. Now, first step, take off the AR, and as you see, for yo, I, you need aba, preparaba. Fourthly, they used to invest. We need the verb to invest, which we see here is invertir, to invest in something. And because it's they used to invest, firstly we take off the IR, and then we look down to ellos, ellas, and put I with an accent AN. If you're not sure how to add an accent, you can go insert symbol, and then you can add an accent from there. Finally, it used to seem. So we need to look up seem, which as we can see here, to seem will give the impression parecer. Now, because it used to seem, we've got to ask which subject pronoun would be appropriate. And with it would be él or ella. So we would use the L and ea ending. Take off the ER and add I accent A. As you can see, it's all red, which suggests that it's wrong. If you look here, we have the language set to English. So if we change that language to Spanish, as we see, all the red disappears, which means we have all 5 verbs correct. Now look at the following examples and conjugate the verbs by following the patterns. And remember those 3 important steps. And remember, practice makes perfect. Let's look at hablar, to speak. Hablaba, hablabas, hablaba. Hablábamos, hablabais, hablaban. Now remember, these all mean I used to, you used to, he, she used to, etc. Or I was speaking, you were speaking, he or she was speaking, etc. Okay, so copy down hablar and then conjugate 2 of these other verbs following the same pattern as hablar. Pause the recording and do that now. Now let's look at comer, to eat. Comía, comías, comía. Comíamos, comíais, comían. Notice how that I with an accent is in every single form of it. So you have I used to eat or I was eating, you used to eat or were eating, etc. Copy this verb down and then conjugate 2 of these other verbs which follow the same pattern as comer, and pause the recording before you carry on. Finally, vivir, to live. Vivía, vivías, vivía. Vivíamos, vivíais, vivían. Notice these endings are exactly the same as for comer, so nice and easy. So copy down vivir now, and then conjugate 2 of these other verbs following the same pattern. Pause the recording before you carry on. Now it's time for you to do this process yourself. Look at the following verbs in a dictionary. Remember, you will see the words ending in AR, ER or IR, and that will tell you which ending to add. Use the reminder on the right to help you, but only if you need to. Por ejemplo, número 1. Yo cortaba. Now the reason why this is the answer is because if you look up cort, you'd find cortar, which means to cut. So therefore you know it's an AR verb, you remove the AR, and then you add aba, which is yo cortaba, I used to cut. Pause recording, complete the activity, and then mark your work. And remember, if you get it wrong, correct your answer, so you learn from your mistake. Número 2. Él comía. Número 3. Nosotros pensábamos. Número 4. Ellas bebían. Número 5. Vosotras trabajabais. Número 6. Tú rompías. Número 7. Ella terminaba. Número 8. Yo bajaba. Okay, excellent. Remember to go back and correct any mistakes you've made. This will help you to learn from them. Okay, now translate the following verbs into English. Remember, work out the infinitive of the verb first. It will be in the dictionary with either AR, ER or IR at the end. And then look at the ending to see who is doing the verb. Por ejemplo, número 1. Descargaba. he or she used to download. Now if you looked up descargar, you would know it means to download, and the aber gives you a clue that it's an AR verb. In this situation you probably would use a subject pronoun because there wouldn't be 100% clarity on who was being spoken about, but ordinarily you wouldn't need to. Pause the recording and complete the activity and then mark your work, and remember, if you get it wrong, correct your answer so you can learn from your mistake. Número 2. Vivíais. You plural used to live. Número 3. Escribías. You singular used to write. Número 4. Cantaban. They used to sing. Número 5. Copiabais. You plural used to copy. How did you get on? If you made any mistakes, remember to correct them, then you can learn from them. Now translate the following verbs into Spanish. Remember, decide on the correct subject pronoun, but you don't need to use it unless you need to clarify who you're talking about. Find the infinitive of the verb, chop off the last two letters, and then add the appropriate ending for that person. Por ejemplo, número 1. I used to sell. Vendía. This is because you look up sell and you find vender, which is the verb to sell. You chop off the ER, and because it's an ER verb, you add I accent A, vendía. Okay, pause the recording and then complete the activity and then mark your work. And if you get it wrong, correct your answer so you learn from your mistake. Número 2. He used to record. Grababa. Número 3. We used to visit. Visitábamos. Número 4. They used to draw. Dibujaban. Número 5. You singular used to write. Escribías. Okay, how did you get on? Remember to correct your work so you can learn from your mistakes if you've made any. There are some vitally important verbs that don't follow the same patterns. The good news is that there are only 3 in the imperfect tense, and these are called irregular verbs. You just have to learn them and then look them up if you're not sure when you're using them. There's some of the usual suspects, unfortunately. Ser, to be, ir, to go, and ver, to see. As you can see, they're outlined below. Ser is era, eras, era, éramos, erais, eran. Ir, to go, is iba, ibas, iba, íbamos, ibais, iban. And ver, to see. Veía, veías, veía. Veíamos, veíais, veía. So these are all irregular, so it's a good idea to copy them down. Otherwise, you can apply your knowledge you've learnt in this lesson to any of the other verbs that you come across. Today we've looked at Spanish verbs in the imperfect tense. We've looked at who's doing the verb, what's the infinitive form of the verb and what you need to do to it, and what are the correct endings that need to be added. We've learned how to recognise regular and irregular imperfect tense verbs, and we've learned how to form regular and irregular imperfect tense verbs as well. Muy bien, adiós.